Welcome back, everyone. Okay, let's dive right into this. I want to start today's explainer by talking about a raise that, well, changed absolutely nothing. And I'm not just talking about some hypothetical scenario here. I'm talking about the exact kind of raise almost every single person has experienced at some point in their working life. You know the one, right? The number on your paycheck finally goes up, you celebrate, but somehow within about 3 short months, your day-to-day life feels fundamentally the exact same as it did before. Sure, maybe your daily routine got a little more expensive, or your lifestyle is slightly more comfortable, but the underlying reality, it hasn't shifted an inch.
Sound familiar? I'm guessing it absolutely does. Because you still feel the exact same financial pressure. You still get that super familiar, nagging end-of-the-month tightness in your budget. And above all, you probably still have that frustrating feeling that there should just be more to show for all the hard work you're putting in day after day. It is incredibly frustrating to earn more money and yet feel like you're just standing completely still.
But here's the thing you really need to understand right off the bat. This is lifestyle inflation. And honestly, it is absolutely not a character flaw. It's not a lack of discipline on your part. It's actually one of the most predictable, well-documented, and fundamentally human responses to an income increase that we've ever observed. Understanding this phenomenon is exactly why earning more money, just on its own, almost never changes your financial life. So today, we're going to break down what actually does.
Section 1. Income is not wealth.
We really have to dismantle a massive myth today, and it requires looking at a pretty uncomfortable truth that the entire personal finance industry is practically built around ignoring. So the crucial point is, income is not wealth. I really want you to just let that sink in for a second. We've been conditioned our entire lives to just smash these two things together, assuming that a high salary automatically equals a high net worth. But they are entirely different concepts.
Now, what's really interesting here is the clear distinction in the mechanics. Think of income as a flow. It's money coming in. It's consistent, it's predictable, sure, but it is 100% dependent on your continued daily effort. The second you stop working, that flow stops. Wealth, on the other hand, is a stock. It's money you've accumulated. It's a resource that's just growing independently in the background, compounding. And critically, it doesn't require you to clock in every day for it to exist.
Let me give you a very real comparison to prove this. Imagine a doctor earning $300,000 a year. Huge income, right? But they have zero savings, no investments, and $250,000 in expenses. They are highly paid, for sure, but they are not wealthy. Now compare them to a teacher who earns $40,000 a year, but this teacher has invested consistently for 20 years and built up a portfolio of $300,000. By almost every meaningful financial measure, that teacher is wealthier than the doctor. Income simply tells you what you earn. Wealth tells you how free you are. And confusing the two, that is literally the most expensive mistake you can ever make.
Section 2. The power of the gap.
So if earning a massive income isn't actually the real goal, what is? Well, we have to shift our entire paradigm. The true objective is mastering something way more powerful, the gap. Not your income, not your expenses, the gap between them, and specifically what you actually do with that gap every single month. Take a look at these numbers. Let's say person A earns $5,000 a month, spends $4,500, which leaves them a monthly gap of $500. Person B earns double that, $10,000 a month, but they spend $9,800, leaving a gap of only $200. Person B brings home way more flow, but person A has a significantly larger gap to invest.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why that gap matters so much more than the paycheck itself. If both people invest their monthly gap over 30 years at an 8% return, the results are just staggering. Person A ends up with around $700,000. Person B, they end up with $280,000. Think about that. The person earning half as much ends up more than twice as wealthy. It is the exact same time frame, the exact same market, but a completely different outcome. The size of your income is not the game. The size of your gap is the whole game.
Section 3. The psychology of spending.
But of course, if the math is really that incredibly simple, we have to unpack why just telling people to spend less rarely actually works in the real world. We need to pivot to the massive psychological hurdle standing in our way. Because when most people see that math, they think, great, I'll just spend less, problem solved. But spending is almost never just about the money, it's about identity. It's totally emotional. It's about the stories we constantly tell ourselves regarding what we deserve and what our money says to the world about who we are. The person upgrading their car every 2 years isn't doing it because they suddenly lack transportation. They're doing it because the car means something, right? It's a signal of status, of success, a well-deserved reward for all that hard work. This isn't some terrible weakness, this is just humanity. But it means that simply telling yourself to restrict your spending usually fails because you're trying to address a surface behavior without addressing the deeply held identity right underneath it.
The real shift isn't about spending less. The real shift is about wanting completely different things. Listen to this quote because it's a total game changer. When the invested dollar starts to feel more satisfying than the spent one, spending less stops feeling like sacrifice, it starts feeling like strategy. Once you reach that point, everything changes. You aren't depriving yourself anymore. You are actively, strategically building your own freedom, and man, that feels completely empowering.
Section 4. Action Plan. A growing gap.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a really actionable execution phase, because to truly succeed here, we can't just have a fixed gap. We need a gap that constantly, predictably grows. And here is exactly how you do that. When your income goes up, the default human response is to inflate your lifestyle. We have to fight that by purposefully increasing the gap instead. So step 1, you get a raise, awesome. Take half of it to improve your lifestyle, but that other half immediately goes to widening your gap. Your investments are going to grow so much faster. Step 2, you build a side hustle or a new income stream. The first few months of that new money go entirely into the gap. Just let it compound. Step 3, you cut an expense you realize you no longer value. That freed up money doesn't just magically disappear into a different expense. It gets redirected straight into the gap.
Section 5. The ultimate financial goal.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to remind you of the big picture. Why are we doing all of this? The finish line was literally never a specific dollar amount. It was never a salary or a massive portfolio value or hitting a certain passive income figure. The real goal, the thing hiding underneath all the math and the strategy, is true lasting freedom. What building a bigger, consistent gap actually buys you over time is freedom from financial decisions made out of fear. It buys you a life lived entirely on your own terms. It gives you the incredible, almost unfair power to say yes to the things that truly matter to you, and honestly, just as importantly, to say no to the things that do not. That freedom is not bought with a bigger income. It is built patiently and consistently with a bigger gap.
So what does this all mean for you today? I want to leave you with one final, stark question. I challenge you to use this exact phrase as your ultimate mental filter for every single financial decision you make from this day forward. Just ask yourself, does this widen my gap or narrow it? Applying that one question consistently is worth way more than any salary increase you will ever receive. You have the knowledge. The only thing left to do now is start.